live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino, joined by my co-host. See, I say co-host. See, I always mess it up because I have two shows. But the co-host, me, co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I can tell you're so excited to talk about this week's slate of games. You can barely get out the first sentence that we've got all this action coming
I am
up.
picking a massive upset this weekend. I am not kidding around. A massive upset will happen this weekend in college football.
Do you have a specific one in mind, or are you just
We're
saying
talking about it tonight, yes.
If you
So
say Navy's going to beat Notre
A&M,
Dame,
LSU, Missouri, Alabama, Oregon, Illinois, and Notre Dame, Navy. If you had to guess what big upset I am picking this weekend, what game do you think?
You're gonna say Navy because you know that I'm going to pick.
Let's go,
Texas A&M.
midshipman. Let's go, midshipman.
You stink. You stink.
As a grandson to a grandfather who is in the Navy in World War II, it is un-American to talk about the Navy midshipmen on this show and not pick them to win. I will never, and I mean ever, pick against the Navy midshipmen.
I hope that Notre Dame wins by 100 points. Why do you got to do this to me?
Un-American.
And also, I am going. No,
Un-American.
Stop that. I also, and a little bit of a spoiler, I'm planning to, and LSU fans, you should be rooting for this. I am planning to pick Texas A&M. Every single time I've picked against LSU, I have been wrong. I don't think I've gotten it right once when I've done that, but I don't care. I'm still going to do it. I think Texas A&M is going to win this week.
Okay, well, I don't know if you saw the clip video. The LSU fans are at your head. So, we're going to bring you down to the Bayou, let you experience a big-time matchup in Baton Rouge. I think for your safety, we might need to hold off on that. But nevertheless, we are going to talk LSU versus Texas A&M, the premier matchup in the SEC this weekend, Joe. The winner will be atop of the standings in the SEC. So we'll talk about that. Missouri versus Alabama. Joe, I asked this question earlier today. What team do you trust more, Missouri or Alabama? Because that's what it's going to come down to. What team do you trust more in this game?
Well, that's what's going to create such a difficult question, and one that might not even be really answerable during this preview that we're going to do. Oh,
it's answerable.
I don't know if it is, because one team's problems, both have surmountable problems, but are not doing anything to fix them. And I don't know who coming into this game is going to play the cleaner game. I would lean Alabama. That's what I'm going to get to when we get to that preview. But I would think that being at home is going to give them enough of an advantage to a team like Mizzou that they should be able to win it.
I don't trust Missouri at all. I'm just going to be honest. I know that
their line's terrible right now.
It's so bad. They can't run the football. They're not being able to find ways to get Luther Burden the football. Brady Cook is running for his life, Joe. But I'll say this, man. Listen, say whatever you want about Brady Cook. Did you listen to Eli Drinkwitz' postgame? Because I did. Dude, heart of a lion, Brady Cook. Joe, Brady Cook, the Missouri quarterback, gets rushed to the hospital for an MRI to see like his hip, his knee, his leg, comes back clean. Joe, the kid's putting his pads on in the hospital, okay, demanding that they bring him back. And then from what apparently has happened, if you listen to people in Como, the dude made the ambulance turn the lights and sirens back on so that he could get to the game. Joe, the man comes back and they win the game. I don't give two Rudy Poos who it was against. That is really cool. That's why you love college football. So shout out to Brady Cook.
I will say that was a story that we didn't really get to talk about on yesterday's show when we did it. But You're 100% right. That was pretty sick. And I know that Brady Cook's season this year has been super up and down. That's awesome. That plays to his character. That's one thing that I think not a lot of people mention enough with Brady Cook is that he is just a tough SOB. He is a leader. He is somebody who's going to fight tooth and nail to finish a football game. And I don't think anyone's going to top that. That is the grittiest achievement that anyone's going to have this year. Is probably the best way to describe it. Grittiest achievement.
I don't know if I'll go that far yet, but it's up there, and it's going to be up there. It's going to be in the Gritty Awards. How about that?
Sure.
The Gritty Awards. How do you like that? A Louisiana man making the Gritty Awards. Okay, but Brady Cook will be up there. Joe, by the way, just need to clarify something as we're on live right now. Breaking, Pete Thamel. The Quinn Ewers story that was rumored to be false of him stepping away and going into the NFL draft was actually a false. Breaking, Quinn Ewers will be sitting the rest of the season.
Don't stop
face.
it. Stop it with misinformation.
Your face. But
Fake
how
news.
crazy is this Quinn Ewers story? In case everybody missed it, apparently 247 Sports reported that he was sitting out the rest of the year. That was fake news. Per Quinn Ewers himself. How crazy was that?
I'm curious what happened. Your meme in response to this was funny. It wouldn't shock me, though. Like, if that happened, it wouldn't shock me.
Here's what I think happened. The way that the Texas reporters reported it, I could see an intern reading the tweet and getting things misunderstood. Okay? I could see that. All right. I think it's a harmless mistake. For what it's worth, it was a harmless mistake. I double taked after seeing some of the reports that he missed the media availability and said he wasn't going to be there because he's not there anymore. I mean, that so much clarification had to come out of that. Texas media overreacted. Go figure. They overreacted to the Quinn Ewers thing. But Quinn's not leaving. Where would he go? He'd be an idiot to leave and go into
but I can understand his perspective of
Joe.
Say the ab strain was re-aggravated and was why he was playing poorly, and then they realized it was really serious, and then also there could be possibility that they might start Arch the next game. You don't know. It's better if he's the one to make that decision and say, I'm done with the year, I'm out of here, than for him to literally get benched and then have to sit there and wait. And then ultimately he's got to answer all those questions to the NFL, so that there's both sides that would have made sense here.
It is interesting that Sark runs out a starting quarterback every week to meet with the media on Mondays. He did not bring out a quarterback. That is very interesting. So they play Vandy this week. Joe, I feel as the week goes on, remember we talked about this on a Monday, I would be shocked if they didn't go to a 2-quarterback system in this one to see what they got moving down the stretch. I think that's going to be interesting. We will talk about Vandy in Texas tomorrow. I promise you.
We've got a super chat, by the way, before we hit the break.
Okay. We'll talk also about Oregon and Illinois at the end of it here. But Elk sends a $5 super chat. He says, did y'all see that Jerome Moore says he won't name a starter? They'll figure it out this week. Michigan is down bad. Do you fire Moore after the season? Bowl ban incoming.
I don't think that they will fire Sharon Moore again. You hired Sharon Moore for a reason, and he takes that job knowing that he is going to have a cushion. It's just like for anyone who is pushing the narrative, is Brent Venables on the hot seat? No, Brent Venables isn't on the hot seat. He just signed an extension. There's a buffer that was created for both of these guys knowing the situation that they were stepping into. I think they should start Jaden Davis at this point, and I jokingly tweeted this, and I actually might be serious about this. Colston Loveland Wildcat. Seriously, like if you don't trust Alex Orji for whatever reason at this point to just run him 40 times a game, that's hyperbolic. Do it with Colston Loveland. He's the best athlete that you have on offense, and you can't get him the ball through the air. You might as well find a way to get him the football.
Yeah, if I'm Colston Loveland, then I'm sitting out the rest of the year. I'm not getting hurt for this. I mean, he's got too big of a career there. So we'll see. I mean, I'm so over the Michigan talk at the current moment about what they're doing at quarterback. It's starting to become a little bit nauseating. So anyway. All right, everybody do us a favor by hitting the like and share. If you're on Facebook, share to all those groups and social media pages. If you're watching us, listening to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts. Do us a favor, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. We come back and break down the premier matchups in Week 9. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. All right, by the way, Danny says, blessings from Canada. Love y'all, boys, and go Canes. Well, thank you, Danny, listening to us from Canada. I'm sure it's starting to get a little cold up there. It's getting a little nipply down here in the deep south, I will say. I had to wear a vest today. I mean, it's getting a little chilly, man. You know what it means, Joe. It's gumbo season. Have you ever had gumbo before?
I don't think I have.
Oh, my God.
Well, why isn't it such a shocking thing to discover that the guy from New Jersey who went to school in Rhode Island and lives in Los Angeles for 30 years has not had gumbo?
I am bringing you down for Thanksgiving. That you got to come.
I don't know about Thanksgiving, but next year the plan.
Thanksgiving.
We're gonna figure something out. We're gonna pick.
You're coming to Ruffino Thanksgiving. You don't have a choice. All right.
Okay.
Let's get rolling. Texas A&M and LSU is the premier matchup in the SEC. Joe, the winner of this game will stand alone in the SEC standings and will remain undefeated. Joe, both teams 6-1. Both teams have a lot of similarities. Both lost their opening game to another Power 4 opponent. Then they've gone undefeated since that point. Both have had rocky roads, right? Not talking about the ice cream. Both have had ups. Both have had downs. But both have been able to find ways to win. Something that was interesting today in listening to Brian Kelly's press conference. He and Mike Elko, also really good friends. Mike Elko was the DC for BK at Notre Dame. So two guys that really know one another. Joe, when you look at this game, how do you see this one playing out?
I think that there's two important factors here that need to be discussed for Texas A&M and LSU. The biggest benefit outside of the momentum that LSU has right now for LSU is that they have the far more experienced coaching staff. And if I were to pick LSU, I haven't made a decision. I was messing with you in the beginning. I haven't made a surefire decision.
Don't get scared now, buddy.
No. I'm just saying. Now. I have not. I will make my decision on pick day because I think that this is going to be a close one.
I agree.
If LSU wins this game, it's going to be because, one of the points that we bring up a lot in these previews, in a close matchup, you pick the team with the better coaching staff, the more experienced coaching staff, all the reason to go with LSU. They're playing so much better defensively, as we've talked about. They're getting after the quarterback with such a higher success rate. They're also doing a great job of protecting Garrett Nussmeier. But the other side where we need to put context on Texas A&M, they've been really good for a first-year head coach team. Mike Elko has this team right. Defensively, they are really freaking good. They're only allowing 30% on third downs. So far this season, you've got a number of guys that are getting after the quarterback. Shamar Turner, Scooby Williams, Nick Scourton have all been super productive. But one thing that stood out to me statistically, and it showed up on film when they played Missouri. This Texas A&M team does not allow many yards after the catch. Mm-hmm. They're a team that plays really sound defensively, and they tackle really well. LSU's success has lived and died on the short to intermediate parts of the field. Garrett Nussmeier, one of his weaknesses, albeit he's got a pretty strong arm, he hasn't connected well on deep balls this season. So I think if there's one area where Texas A&M could win this on the defensive side of the football in a close game where LSU needs to connect on a shot, I think that's worth noting that Texas A&M has been having success in that area.
So I'm going to add on to the last part very quickly. Joe, here's the question that I have. Missouri's been very much struggling throwing the football. They have not been able to protect Brady Cook. The question that I have in the keys to victory, I'll give it here on Ruffino and Joe Show on Monday. We do it when we talk LSU on Thursdays, what I believe. The big question I have is, has A&M secondary faced a unit that can throw the ball around like this, right? And I get what you're saying, and I agree. They're a very well-coached defensive team. Elko is a fantastic DC, and a fantastic defensive mind. My question becomes is how does LSU attack them? Joe, last week they found an intermediate passing game that went off. CJ Daniels was the number one wide receiver in the portal for a reason. He also went off 8 big catches after coming back from the injury. But Joe, here's if I'm LSU, the number one thing that they got to do is get out fast. Let me explain. I don't know if LSU could get up a score or maybe even 2 by chance. I don't think A&M can play catch up. Right? They're 103rd, they're 107th in the country in passing yards. I know that Connor Wigman had a really good game against Mizzou, but I also think that there was added into there that his receivers went off for him too. Joe, against Miss State, my man came back to earth. Okay, there were some bad passes. He got picked off twice. I think that this is a very close game, but I don't know if LSU's strengths aren't a little bit more than what A&M's strengths would be on for LSU. Like, I expect A&M to stop the run. I expect them to be really good there. Joe, I expect them to wreak some havoc on third down. Look, you got one of the best defensive units, and on third down, 16th is A&M versus one of the best offensive units on third down, that being LSU at 11th. But I just look at this and say, look, LSU's not giving up sacks. They're not giving up many pressures. And I don't know if A&M, because the big teams that they've played, Notre Dame and Missouri. Joe, what has been the 2 complaints that we've talked about Notre Dame and Missouri? That they have not been effectively throwing the football the way that we thought that they could or would. With that being said, that is the biggest strength for LSU. Now, for A&M, Joe, here's what I would be – if I'm LSU, what I'd be terrified about. If you can't run the football, at some point you're going to get beat, right? You couldn't run the football against Ole Miss. You did have a lot of success now that Caden Durham was back and more healthy than what he was against Ole Miss. Can you do that against A&M? Joe, last year, LSU barely could run the football outside of Jaden Daniels in the game a year ago, and you got a lot of those same core pieces in the middle there with Shamar Turner, Stewart, all those guys, right? And you bring in Nick Scourton. The thing for me, though, Joe, is that I don't think that A&M's D-line has faced an O-line that has been this successful yet. And so that's, again, to those strengths of A&M, LSU, I feel like, can combat that. Last thing I'm going to say before you get to your point here. LSU has not beaten Texas A&M in Kyle Field since 2016, since Ed Orgeron was officially hired. Joe Burrow went in there 7 overtimes and lost. LSU, when they won the West under Brian Kelly 2 years ago, they lost at the end of the year. Joe, I don't care what anybody tells me. And I know that home field advantages have really played big this year for most teams. Look at the upsets. Joe, this place is going to be rocking because they believe, whether you look at A&M fans or not, they truly believe that if they can get past LSU, that their schedule is favorable enough that they can make a playoff run in year 1 under Mike Elko. So it's been a tough series for LSU going on the road to Kyle Field.
Quickly on that thought, it's kind of like how Alabama always has Georgia's number. No matter if there's some disparity, whatever it is, Kirby can't get past Alabama, and it's something that
Which is ironic because LSU used to dominate this series, Joe. When they came in the league, they won 10 straight games.
And same thing applies for that example I just gave there. It's only really been recently that we've seen that. So that is certainly something worth noting here. To extrapolate on 2 points that you just made that I think are really great for discussing this on like what is required of both teams to win. Texas A&M's sack production, a lot of it came against what is probably a bottom 4 offensive line in the SEC. They're playing bad. We're going to get to Missouri later. They got their asses kicked with a bunch of 4-man pressure fronts. It didn't require much effort for Texas A&M to get home against Missouri. So they're getting a lot of their sack production there. They didn't have a great game against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's offensive line is good. This was before they got banged up at the start of the season, but it was starting a couple of young players, and they couldn't get home.
Freshman at left tackle,
right? They couldn't get home. So there's a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde with this defensive line. It's tremendous. It's very, very talented. Nick Scourton starting to like really get into his rhythm, it feels like, after he had a bit of a slow start. This game is going to be won on that part of this, as we talk about a ton, the line of scrimmage is always the easiest thing to lean on in these conversations, especially in the SEC. Will the Texas A&M pass rush overcome an offensive line that has only allowed 2 sacks entirely this season? And then the second part.
Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say the second part that you bring up, you're having all these troubles trying to run the football, and you can't do it consistently. You're going up against a team that does run the ball extremely well. Even when they transition from Marcel Reed back to Connor Weigman, Le'Veon Moss popped off against Missouri, which was still a pretty good defense that they were going up against. If they can win the time of possession, if they can keep LSU off the field and they can slow the game down like they felt like they were trying to against Notre Dame and they did against Missouri, that's how they can pull this game out and they can win it. So there's two sides of this, of what LSU can do to win because their O-line's so good, and then inversely, as you brought up here, if that Texas A&M run game takes over compared to the LSU one.
Joe, I look at one thing to your point about A&M running the football. I'm glad you brought this up. This is a really good discussion piece.
Yeah.
LSU is 33rd in the country in run defense. Think about that for just a moment. Joe, they gave up 2 65-plus yard runs against South Carolina. They gave up a 75-yard run against Nichols. Joe, I hate using the comparison that I'm bringing up, but I'm trying to get a point of how they've been more in the totality of the game as an example. Joe, if you take one of those plays out, just one, that went for a touchdown, LSU is 11th in run defense. If you take 2 of them out post Harold Perkins, Joe, they're second. So I think that there comes a part where we talk about, Joe, what is, we're not talking about LSU's defensive line. It's fine because they've given up big misses in the run game, and they did it early. They did it against Ole Miss early when they're playing freshmen. But I think that here's an interesting thing. I'm going to ask you this, Joe, from a statistical analysis standpoint, even though I don't know if I truly believe what I'm about to say here, from a statistical point, LSU has been better than any defensive line that they faced so far this year, whether it be the run game or in the havoc rate, especially in the last 4 weeks or at least 3 weeks since Harold Perkins went down against UCLA. So, look, I look at this, Joe, and I just say I'm with you. It worries me as an LSU fan if I were one. I am. But if it would worry me that I think that LSU, to this counterpoint, Joe, the more physical running team that they saw was South Carolina, and South Carolina at moments carved them up, right? And so there are counteractions that I look in this. Now, I'm going to bring up this point. I think in the pass game, LSU has maintained without Harold Perkins rushing the passer. Joe, as they're starting to call him down in the bayou, the honky badger, Whit Weeks, Joe, he's been the SEC player of the week the last 2 weeks in the SEC. So
Can I bring up, why do I feel like no one's talking about Braden Swinson, by the way? Like, why do I feel like nationally no one's talking about this? Kid's got 7 sacks, 8 tackles for loss.
And by the way, he had a think about this. He had a strip sack, okay, against Arkansas on Saturday that they labeled as not a sack because Taylon Green caught the ball back in the air.
What?
So he swiped down, okay, the ball gets deflected out and somehow gets bobbled around. Taylon Green catches it, okay? They don't give Swinson the sack. By the way,
so he would have 8
he
sacks.
rolls
right
out
now.
of the pocket and throws the football, which should have been a 15-yard penalty. So Braden Swinson should have 8 sacks. I am on record in saying this. So just throwing it out there.
He's not getting enough love, though. I was perplexed.
He's
when I was
gone
looking
off.
at his stat. Yeah, he's been.
Can
phenomenal.
I say something? He's everything that people thought Harold Perkins would be.
Well, he's also. I mean,
At
he's
a different position. I get that,
yeah,
but
he's a much different build. But right. The production that you're getting out of Swinson is what you were expecting to get out of Harold Perkins.
Correct.
It's a very interesting point.
So,
sorry, I'm just trying to see where he ranks.
He's second. Let me back up. He was second last week because Kennard probably went off this week too.
He's listed 7th. There's Antoine Powell Ryland, who's the Virginia Tech kid.
Yeah,
who had a big game against Miami. He's got 10, so he's up there. And right, like you said, he's tied with He's tied with Kennard.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he's second in the SEC, but he has been going off. It's going to be interesting. And by the way, how is Chase Basantis? I think it's a big question on that one too.
Yeah.
Joe, last point that I want to make here. Well, I'm going to leave that alone. I'll wait to say that on Wednesday. But okay. I'm really interested to see if LSU goes up early, if Connor Wigman can answer the call. I'm really interested, Joe.
It's a good point. When he was kind of playing behind in the Notre Dame game, it felt like he was trying just like really hard to rebalance in that situation. But I still think, and this was my whole talking point after he played so well against Missouri, was that I think was an example of why I think we're too quick to bail on kids when they have one or two bad games, that there's plenty of room for improvement when you're especially as gifted as he is. I think that he's playing his best football, and when you had a performance like you did a couple weeks ago, all the more reason why he's going to play well. And also, by the way, one thing we didn't mention here, we're hyping up the LSU offensive line. The Texas A&M offensive line's only allowed 7 sacks this year. So they're also a very, very good unit. They don't have the premier first-rounders like LSU does, but they've got a really good group that's just playing really well together.
Yeah, so look, we do this on every prediction. I'm not going to miss it on this one, too. We pick our games on Wednesdays. Joe, if this were a neutral site, I'd say flip a coin. I'm still going to say flip a coin. I think it's that's where I'm at. If you came to me, which I see a super chat in there, could maybe be reminded of this. So Fravel Edit says, sorry, Blake, I love you, man, but Texas A&M is going to beat LSU. Joe, I can see it. I mean, I can see that happening. He says,
well, yeah, Notre Dame fans need Texas A&M. Right.
Only because it fits my pro Notre Dame agenda, and we can say we won a road game against the number one team in the SEC standings. It's just business. Thank you for the super chat, and I understand it. But to the point, could I see it? Yes. But I also, Joe, let me ask you this. Do you know more about the adversity that LSU has overcome or A&M? Because I feel like that from a national perspective, because LSU's played Ole Miss, okay, they played Arkansas, and they played USC as a standalone game, and then you had College Game Day at South Carolina. I mean, I feel like, Texas A&M played Mississippi State and Notre Dame. The last
come on, I wouldn't discredit. I don't know, man. I don't know if I would go that far to say that.
I'm not discrediting them, but you cannot tell me that they have faced a better team than this one. I know Notre Dame.
I think this is the best matchup for both these teams this season.
I agree with that.
By a pretty big margin, too, to be perfectly clear.
Oh, man. This is what when A&M came into the league, this is what, and Les Miles was running through the league, this is what everybody thought that this rivalry was going to be, just to be honest with you, that these premier matchups were going to happen. So, here we are. All right. Joe, let's stay in the SEC very quickly, and then we'll go to Notre Dame and Navy and why I think Navy is going to beat Notre Dame.
Stop it.
Second game. Missouri, Alabama this weekend. Joe, I can already hear it. I can hear the Bama fans calling Paul Feinbaum right now and saying, we stink. Well, maybe you might. But Missouri have to come back in the thriller against Auburn. Brady Cook comes back from the hospital, literally. No, I'm not making that up. Comes back from the hospital, comes into the game, and he was able to find a way to lead his team to a victory. Alabama coming off a tough loss to Tennessee this past weekend. Your thoughts on this game, Bama and Mizzou?
I mentioned this in the open. Both these teams, it's really weird to look at how they've performed so far this year. And now Alabama's team stats are more impressive than Missouri's because they've played more difficult opponents so far. Alabama's problems are exactly as I've diagnosed them on film and also statistically. They are pretty explosive still on offense despite what has looked like they've been having issues. All of their problems come down to one, they're not protecting Jalen Milroe well enough. They've allowed 13 sacks so far this season, which isn't a bad number, but certainly is not as good as this offensive line has been hyped up to be. But mostly importantly, I keep coming back to the penalties, 81 penalty yards per game, and it's something that is going to be constantly brought up that they're playing sloppy, undisciplined football. Yep. If they removed that, they'd have one of the best offenses in the country just in terms of points per game because they're throwing the ball at a really good clip. They're playing pretty good defense. Their secondary is pretty good, but they're putting themselves in these back-breaking spots where they can't overcome it because the penalties are too much. The Kendrick Law penalty at the end of the game is a perfect example.
That should have been a no call. That should have been a no call.
I agree, but I understand that, but a disciplined team doesn't fall for that bait, man. A disciplined team walks away from that.
Joe, it's a rivalry game.
I get that. I mean,
hold on 1 second.
Look, this is coming from. Hold on 1 second. This is coming from a long snapper who has 2 personal fouls for shit talking in college. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, I got into scuffles. I got 2 personal fouls. So I've got no room to talk. I was a damn good long snapper.
No business getting penalties. You should have been cut.
I got yelled at.
I'm sure you did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. We're allowing kids to pull out shotguns and shoot an opponent after a sack, and no flags are being committed or thrown. Yeah, spare me on guys in a heated rivalry or getting heated. Calm down. Stop making the game about you anyway. George, go ahead.
I just want to bring up here with Missouri that Missouri is in a very similar light here, that their defense is playing really well. But because they've been on the field so much and that their offensive line is playing like such shit right now, they can't protect Brady Cook. They can't get the ball out. They can't move the ball on offense.
I can't make my point after you just said that. And then
sorry.
Let me go to Alabama.
Okay.
Joe, do you think that Jalen Milroe's hurt?
Not necessarily.
He kind of came up limping after a big hit against Tennessee, and Alabama fans are starting to question, at least that I've seen on Twitter. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's right. It's not that he's necessarily hurt, like injured. Well, he's not injured. He's hurt. He's beat up. Okay. And it would make a little bit of sense the way that they're not running him. Joe, they barely tried to, after they got stopped once, they did not try to run him again, right? He got tackled for a loss. Joe, they did not come back to a design run play. I wonder how beat up he is. And it's just a question that I'm having. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. But Joe, for me, it comes down to 2 things, or one massive thing, but 2 things on this one. What team do you trust the most? Because I got to be real with you. Stats and all that stuff that we talk about, they're doing this team's doing that. Jalen Milroe's thrown 4 interceptions the last 2 weeks. Joe, my eyeballs tell me that Alabama's about to win this football game and that they might do it convincingly. I mean, before Brady Cook is out of the game, Joe, Auburn is doing some really damn good things against Mizzou. And they're throwing the ball against Mizzou. They're running the ball against Mizzou. I get that Brady Cook went down. It's a big deal. And I know that – and Auburn's just a bad overall football team. But the bottom line is, Joe, I just trust Bama more, man. I do think that they're going to be able to go in here and run the football. I do think that they're going to be able to have success offensively. I do think, Joe, for what it's worth, I mean, you saw what one very physical football team did to Missouri. Now you're about to see another one, and one that's pissed off. So I get that everybody wants to be down and out on Bama. Sounds cool. All right, cool. That D-line is still really freaking physical. That secondary is still very freaking physical. That O-line is still very freaking physical. Joe, my eyeball test, when I watch both teams, I'm like, bro, if I feel like Bama's about to really roll here. However, to the second point here, okay, you brought up one key thing. You ready? Penalties. You know how you're keeping teams and you're playing up and down to your opponent? Penalties. Undisciplined. That is what has happened. Not only Kalen DeBoer, Joe, we talked about this last night. That was happening under Nick. There's only one thing in a common denominator of why Alabama has been screwing up. It's you, the player. And nobody likes, oh, Blake's going after players. I didn't point any one person out. But one thing that I am going to do is you had the greatest coach of all time that was there last year for most of you, and then you had a coach that was in a national title game the year before. So it comes down to one thing for me. What are you going to do about it? The X's and O's is great. I love it just as much as the next guy. Now it's starting to come to the Jimmys and Joes. Who's going to line up and bust somebody in the mouth? Because when I watch Bama, I feel like that you're just undisciplined, and that is why you're losing football games a lot of this. And not only penalties is it showing up, It's showing out in you being in the wrong gap defensively and so many other things that you're doing.
I keep saying this. Alabama hits their ceiling if they eliminate the penalties. Like, it is clearly just one major thing that's dragging them down. But I don't know. It's easier said than done for that to be resolved and that to be fixed and them to move on from it.
Fair.
I agree with you, though, man. And Missouri fans, I'm sure you're not going to love this. I agree with you. I think that Alabama has every right to win this game confidently and handedly, and for this to be, I'm not calling this the get right, because last time I did it, they didn't get right in the manner that we were expecting them to.
Don't say that no more. Don't say that no more.
Missouri has already shown us a dud performance on the road. And
I think I mean, last week's performance is also a dud. Let's call it what it is.
Well, that was at home.
Well, okay, I see what you're saying. But I'm just saying,
I was talking about this. So the
dud games.
Right, the Texas A&M game on the road, you didn't show up. The environment got to you. Alabama's home stadium right now, it's popping. It is rocking. We saw how much they impacted that Georgia game early. I think that they're going to be very present for this matchup against Missouri. But the biggest thing that I mentioned a second ago, man, that I do not have faith in, they've got all these weapons, but they can't get them the football. They've only allowed 16 sacks on the year, which is a bad number. But the scariest part is they allowed 5 to Auburn. 5. They got their asses kicked by Texas A&M. They can't block. And you're going up against a group led by LT Overton, Jahad Campbell, Deontay Lawson. We could keep going down and down the list of all the guys that they have on that defensive line. They haven't been hitting home with the sack production that you would like. But I know that they're going to feast like we've seen some of these other groups, and that is going to be a big factor in why I think Alabama wins this football game.
In reference to Mizzou, for me, you have the talent. You have the weapons on the outside. I feel like Eli Drinkowitz and Kirby Moore, they're trying to run their offense as if their offensive line doesn't suck.
Yeah.
You know, like you're trying to run a post pattern with Burden. You're trying to get Weiss on a double move. What are you doing? You don't have time for that. You got good enough weapons and a good enough quarterback. Joe, they should literally be dinking and dunking until teams back off of it. Until guys
are fun. Plenty last year. I don't know why they haven't been doing a better job of that.
I don't know. I don't know. Joe, here's a philosophy that I live by, okay? And I did it against you when we played college football 25, okay? Joe, yards mean everything. If you get 8 yards and you get Luther Burden the football immediately, who knows what he's going to do with it? Joe, stats don't mean shit anymore. He's got to get 10 touches, okay? Throwing the football. Go full-on air raid. Go, Joe, I've seen Gus Malzahn throw 25 screens against Bama. I've literally seen it with my own eyes. Joe, by the way, they won. Nick Marshall and company won the football game. Get back to being who you are. Now, in reference to one thing, Joe, their O-line's really bad, man. It's really bad.
Yeah.
So this has the potential, very strong potential, that if you're not ready, Bama can roll. All right.
100%.
We have another $10 super chat from Fravel Edits. He says, Joe, there is no way you still think Miami is a great team after that performance. Third straight week getting helped out by the refs. They are lucky they canceled the game in South Bend in November last year or this year.
I didn't know that they actually had a game scheduled. I don't know how you can't not love this Miami team, though. And I understand it sucks me saying that as a Notre Dame fan. I'm supposed to hate them. Their offense is the best in the country. Like, I don't think there's a debate right now that offense is the best in the country, that they can score on any drive when they need points on the board. That's what makes them such a good team. When their defense doesn't play well, can they just take over and score 100 points? They can.
So let me just say this. That 2019 LSU team, one or two things are going to happen. You ready? Either they're going to be like this, okay, and 2019 LSU from a numbers perspective is going to happen, or your defense is not going to get things, because people forgetting that 19 team for LSU. John Bryce Plumlee ran for 300 plus yards on LSU. That 2019 Natty team, he ran for 300 yards as a quarterback. Okay. what direction are you going to go? All right?
Right.
Are you going to go the Jaden Daniels route? Or are you going to go – Joe, their secondary is very bad. Let me tell you something that I spoke to a coach that loves us, okay? A college football coach in the SEC that loves us. He told me that there's probably 4 teams in the SEC that he thinks just because their defense is so bad that an SEC team would destroy. Like they would destroy them because the main thing is they're so reliant on Cam Ward that they feel like that they can run the ball on them, that they could do good things, and that their secondary is poo-poo.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Joe, their secondary is horrible. It's bad.
I wouldn't go as far as say it's horrible. I don't think it's been playing good the past couple weeks. There's talent there.
Cal smacked that butt. Virginia Tech, who can't throw the football, smacked that butt. Y'all keep playing around with this, man. All right. They're going to get beat if they don't fix it. You're God dog it. You were so right. This is my Washington from last year.
Yeah, but I told you. It's happening again. You're going to pick Clemson in the ACC championship game, and then all the Miami fans are going to turn on you like the Washington fans did last year.
Because I picked Miami to win in the preseason. I can't back out on my pick now.
Yeah, you can. What are you talking about? Sure,
no, you're down, and so you want me to make outrageous picks like the next game they were going to talk about? Because Navy takes on Notre Dame. Let's go, midshipmen. I think it is 1,000% un-American to not root for a service academy regardless of who they play.
You can't say that before I give my take on why Notre Dame wins this game. That's unfair. It's very leading of you to do that to me. You are
un-American. Go ahead and talk bad about the Naval Academy. They protect you, Joe.
To push that aside.
You're doing.
To push that completely aside, Notre Dame's winning this football game. And I think that one thing that stood out to me, I don't think it's like a hot take. It's like, oh my God, Joe said that they're going to win the game. What? That's crazy. Neutral site game. It's here in New Jersey. Sadly, I won't be going to it. I had tickets for it. I was going to go to it, but going to Rhode Island homecoming instead because Sean and I are doing something fun for that. But this game, what has hurt teams in any situation going up against a Service Academy team, and especially this version, the way that they're playing offense, is if you're not fundamentally sound and you're not well coached. You got to know who's got who has what responsibility on any given play. That has been one thing that has stood out to me the most from Notre Dame's defense. Outside of the NIU game, they have played really strong, gap sound football. They're downhill and they tackle really well. It paints the light for why they should win this football game. Outside of thoughts on the performance and what to expect, Notre Dame has to win this game by 20 plus.
They're not going to.
I don't care. And I know that like I'm very cautious and I'm not saying that they will win, but Notre Dame needs to win this game handedly. I get that they're ranked, but they're still a G5 team. Notre Dame can't dick around and step into this game thinking like, oh, it's Navy. We'll see what happens and then win by 7 points. They need to leave no doubt at the end of the season. It's been something that I keep harping on and talking about with Notre Dame. Leave no doubt for the committee. Leave no doubt. If you're going to go undefeated this final stretch and be in the final conversation, you have to dominate teams because you're going to be competing with the best example of a team that you're going to be competing with, Blake, is Indiana. Indiana could finish the year, lose to Ohio State, be 11-1 or be 10-2. But when you look at their schedule, playing against Big Ten teams, they're blowing them out. They're on a historic run that replicates Alabama and Georgia teams in the past decade of how much they're winning by margin of victory. They have to dominate this Navy team. It is going to be a hard game, but if you play to your potential that we've seen on some weeks, they should kick their ass, and they need to win pretty handedly and confidently.
Notre Dame, I'm going to say this. You're not going to like it. If Notre Dame's 11-1, they're getting in no matter what because of the brand of who they are.
I get that, but I don't know if that's a lock, man. Like I don't think that's as much of a guarantee.
It's a lock.
I was on TJ Pittenger's show earlier today, and we were talking about this. But so he brought that up too, and I don't truly 100% believe in that the committee's just going to pull them.
1,000% true. 1,000% true. You know it
all the way in.
And I know it. But Joe, you got some young players that are starting to have to play. Okay, I'm going to be real with you. The last time that I remember seeing Notre Dame on a team that, stay with me, that has O-line read option principles, they were very undisciplined in their front seven. That being NIU, okay? They would run pounder and then zone off of it. My question now becomes, what has Notre Dame learned? Because the NIU thing should not have happened. But I'm specifically looking at defense. Let's turn on the all-22 because let's talk about what really happened. You are out of gap. You are not sound. I know it's NIU and you played a team that you had no business being around. The problem was, Joe, they were out of assignment a lot of times in the running game. It's how a lot of those third downs got converted. And Joe, this is not a team that you can't be fundamentally sound against. It's not. And I'm going to tell you something. Even if you win by 10, the score is, unless it's like 3 points, the score is not going to indicate how you feel in a game, right? Like you could beat a team by 17, but you know that it was a full domination. Remember the Georgia-Clemson game in the beginning of the year, Joe? And we were like, nah, Clemson pretty much whipped that butt even though the first half was close. So you kind of felt like that game was never going to get into Clemson's hands. Joe, I think that what we're seeing from Navy and Army this year, and we kind of have alluded to it. We talked about it last week on this show with them and both them and Army being ranked. Joe, they're actually, ironically, not bad football teams. I mean, they're really solid.
No, they're good. They're good teams. And they're good competitive G5 teams.
I don't want to. I hate when you put that G5 label on them because, man, they just get.
That's what they are.
Joe, I'm going to be real with you. I think that you're not. I don't know how disciplined you're going to be this week. I do think Notre Dame will win, but I'm going to be honest with you. This game might be close. Dude, all right. Dude, you know that I don't, when we talk Notre Dame, because I don't want people thinking I'm biased. I'm dead serious. You got to show me that you are disciplined in certain situations in your front seven. Joe, they hadn't been. Okay, you have been like that against Georgia Tech. Blake, what are you talking about? We did it last week against Georgia Tech.
And we did it against Stanford.
They did it against Stanford. Haynes King's not there, and Stanford is dookie water, and you know it. This is a team that actually has a pulse, and they're always, Joe, Navy offensively is always assignment correct. Here's the thing. This is the third straight week that you have gone up against a secondary that's been 80th in the country or worse. Joe, why you're not dominating more in the air is mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling. Dude, I'm going to keep saying this every single week. This is not the Mike Denbrock that I know.
One of the things that I've been talking about after the Georgia Tech game, they have been on a week-to-week basis from Stanford to Georgia Tech the last 2 weeks. They have been opening up their passing attack more. Like they have been expanding it more. They've been figuring out what works, and what worked for them is attacking more short to intermediate. You know, going more 7 to 15 yards. That's all that they can do. They can't connect over the top, and every time that they try to, Riley Leonard gets picked off, and just terrible bad plays keep happening. They need to keep relying on that. I think that they're improving and they're getting better. They're not like they were against NIU, and they're not like they were against Texas A&M. I think they're figuring out how to get into a rhythm offensively.
Your passing offense, Joe, is 105th in the country. So even though things have gotten better, okay, they've gotten better against worse opponents. And this one's not better. I mean, look, Navy's defensive backs, they're giving up a lot of yards against a lot of really bad teams.
They're also getting run over a ton. They're giving up 165 rush yards per game. And then you mentioned the 224 passing they're giving up a game. Like, their defense isn't good enough to. They're a team that's going to win.
They're going to play keep away from you, though.
Yeah, they're going to try to. I don't know if they're going to do it successfully.
I'm not giving up on the midshipmen. Okay, they are Joe. I'm going to be real with you. What if Navy has one loss on the year? Then what? So
they don't get into the play. If they don't
if Boise State wins out, I think they're going to get in. But they got a big game against UNLV this week that we got to talk about. Look, I know I've been joking with you. Okay, that I'm picking the midshipmen. No, I wasn't joking with you. Give me the midshipmen, baby. It is un-American.
Move on to the next game. Move on to the next game. You stink.
All right. I'm just joking. I know. All right. Joe, the last game that we have here, Oregon versus Illinois. Joe, what if I would have told you, and I say this every week, so let me restart that. Joe, Oregon versus Illinois. Ranked matchup in the Big Ten. How do you see this one going down?
Plain and simple, Oregon wins this game. It's at home. They have a big advantage of Illinois having to travel to play there. They're pretty high right now. Not a lot of people were talking about this because of all the craziness that happened. That perfect letdown opportunity against Purdue, and they came out
Purdue's
swinging.
a really bad football team.
I know that they are. I understand that they are, but we have seen plenty of teams like Notre Dame, for example. We've seen plenty of teams have massive letdowns after big wins. I think it's commendable for the way that Oregon played. But more
and they had to travel across the country. And we've seen teams that travel across the country that have been really suspect.
Most importantly, why I feel really good about Oregon in this matchup, and they shouldn't have anything to worry about. I really like this Illinois team. I think that their defense is great. Gabe Jacas has been really dominant on their defensive line. But right now, Illinois' O-line has been having a rough go. They have been giving up a ton of sacks. They've given up 20 up until this point this year. And that front seven for Oregon is cooking. Derek Harmon, Jordan Birch, Mateo Uiagalelei are all producing at a ridiculous clip in sacks, tackles for loss. And when you flip on the film, they're driving guys off the ball every single play. That to me is enough. That's all I got to pinpoint, man. If your defensive line is that much better than an opposing team's offensive line, you're going to win time of possession. You're going to get off the field quicker. You're going to run the ball really hard with Jordan James, who's got 700 yards on the ground this year and averaging 5.9 yards per carry. There's no reason to doubt Oregon. Illinois is a fun story, but they're just not on that same level.
This one has blowout alert to me for one reason. Illinois is 113th in the country in third down defense. So one of the worst defenses on third downs in the country. They have gotten out-coached, out-schemed, out-physicaled, and out-dueled at every area. Joe, there is one thing, though, that I need to mention. I am interested to see this secondary for Illinois go up against this Oregon wide receiver room. I think that they're going to have success. However, Illinois not had a bad secondary this year, man. They've kind of been clampy, and they've given up some third downs because they've been a little too handsy at times. But, man, I think Oregon, you're right. I think they roll here. I think the connectivity that they had during the Ohio State game has started to propel them. I'm interested to see, though, man, does Oregon have that letdown moment in the sense of other teams have? Now, maybe their letdown moment came against Boise and they kick a field goal and won the game. But, man, Joe, I don't know what they don't do well right now. We haven't seen tested. Like, I feel like we've seen everything that you can throw at Oregon that's been tested. Their adversity against Boise State, not being able to run the football. How does Dylan Gabriel overcome it? You play Ohio State. Can you attack that secondary? You do. By the way, with Caleb Downs being there, yeah, this is going to be a tough one for Illinois. I just don't know if Illinois, who's been better defensively than I think people are giving them credit for, they can give you some problems, man. They can really give – they're a top 50 defense in the country. So they can give you problems, but I don't know, man. You had Ohio State. You're going across the country. You come back home. That's a lot of travel. Could you come out flat? I don't know if they will. I just don't like coming out here and saying I feel like a team's going to get blown out, but it has all the markings of a team getting blown out.
Yeah, I just don't see an area where, like we've talked about some of these other games where we thought there was going to be a blowout and it didn't come to fruition. We also called a couple of those shots like really early in the year where we were kind of just playing off of vibes a little more than we were playing off of film and stats. But everything we're talking about here, Illinois is a good team. Illinois has been a fun story. They've been a big riser. Defensively, they're playing really good football. They're running the ball pretty well. Luke Altmaier is the king of efficiency, 15 touchdowns to 1 interception. But I can't help but be focused on the fact that I don't think that their offensive line is built to keep up with this Oregon front that has just been kicking the crap out of everybody. The biggest part here, you never want to be the team that peaks too early. And as much as we criticized Oregon early, they're figuring their stuff out. And that's one of the things that we talked about. It takes time. They are playing at a very high trajectory. However, the kiss of death seems to keep happening with whoever's ranked number 1. So that's the only thing that I'm going to throw out there. It's been a weird ass year. There could be some crazy shit this week. Who knows? But that's the only thing that I could throw in there for why Illinois could win.
Joe, to your point, I do want to see Oregon. Look, you played Ohio State, very emotional game. You do go take care of business, traveling all the way across the country to the Midwest. Then you come back. My question becomes, okay, Joe, at what point do we see them start being sloppy? Or will they? Are they peaking at the right time? Those are the questions. I just don't know where Illinois can beat them at. Maybe Luke Altmaier, you got to play keep away. He goes off. He connects on third downs. That would be the way. I will say this. I do think Illinois can run the football, though, on Oregon a little bit. Oregon's been a little leaky in their defensive run game. Joe, they're 47th in the country. I know that it happened with Genty, but they're still a little leaky. I mean, I'm trying to find ways that they can win here is what I'm trying to do.
Fegan, the running back's a dump truck. I think he's like 6'2", 240. He's huge. He's an enormous kid. So that is one simple facet of like, do they run the ball well? Do they play really good in play action? Do they get Altmaier on the move and keep pressure out of his face? They're going to need that.
Yeah, I mean, that's about it, Joe. I mean, for me, when I look at them, I just look at Oregon. You're right. The number 1 team in the land thing is out there. You would have to have some really big chaos for this to happen. But let's not say that it can't happen, man, because it sure as hell could. So we'll see.
Yep.
All right.
Absolutely.
Any more super chats?
No.
I don't know what this is. Darth Ducky says bleepity bleep. The bleep. I don't even know what this means, but Darth Ducky. Oh my goodness.
What? That's ridiculous.
Is this the real live duck?
It's giving those vibes.
Hey, I bet you won't fight. All right. We'll see y'all again tomorrow. So subscribe. You'll get all the clips for tomorrow's stuff too. We'll see you tomorrow. You have a good one. Peace.